It's an underrated classic movie I have always loved. I keep watching it because I love the atmosphere, I love the ambiance, I love the simple romance in this movie, but there's more to it than that. Pretty in Pink coming up next. In my head, I always classify Pretty in Pink as a John Hughes movie, even though it's not directed by Hughes. But I think anybody who watched The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, other Hughes' movies, the script is just pure Hughes, and then some of the concerns, all the thematic issues, I think come up here. And this could have been filmed by Hughes, or a lot of it could have been. Now, one reason I think this movie is underrated, and this is just me, it's subjective, I think this movie has a lot of charm. It's like the inexplicable magic of cinema that couldn't be repeated in a number of ways. And let me list them off. First of all, it's all the acting. I love all the actors and all the roles. Molly Ringwald, classic. I wish she had never aged or grown up. I think she could still do movies like this, but if she could have just done a million movies where she was the star of the high school teen movie drama thing, drama comedy, it would have been wonderful. I'd love to see 100 more of these with her as the star. Amplifying her and her character, Harry Dean Stanton. Oh, an amazing actor. Love him to death as the dad, the sad sack dad to her character. Also then, unbelievable, unforgettable performance. Probably annoyed some people, probably charming to some people. I think it's both. John Cryer as Ducky. I think he's supposed to be a fun but annoying character, sort of a friend to Andy, the Ringwald character, but he's in love with her, and the dilemma or the tension of being, having a friend for life, but then falling in love with your friend. That's Ducky's dilemma. But he is, he's at least charismatic, and I think it's supposed to be fun and annoying, as I said. Then you have Andrew McCarthy. Now, do you all like Andrew McCarthy? I like him as the doe-eyed hunk, the Prince Charming in this movie. I feel like he's sort of friendly or could be my friend. And it's the contrast between him and James Spader, both of whom are supposed to play rich boys, snobby rich boys. But the McCarthy character is stooping down to the level of the Andy character, who is poor, working class, and the first couple of shots of this movie show her environment as opposed to the rich person, location. This is a typical concern of 80s movies like Karate Kid, but definitely like John Hughes in The Breakfast Club. Watch that movie and you see rich and poor come together, forced to come together in The Breakfast Club. Here they come together of their own free choice. Besides all those actors, I like the ambiance of the movie, the look of it. It looks like it's from another world, the late or mid to late 1980s. The record store and its ambiance, Molly Ringwald's room, and the clothing and the hair are just bizarre, fascinating. It's fascinating that they're even smoking in high school. So one, the romance plot, which I find to be Jane Austen-like. If Jane Austen were born in 1968, she would approve of this movie. If Frank Capra were born in 1968, he would love this movie. But also then the ambiance of the movie, and those two things together, the romance plot and the ambiance, I think make for sort of timeless comedic classics that from the 1930s and 40s, those movies like My Man Godfrey endure. This movie could endure if it has enough enthusiasts like me. Now the heart of this movie just could be a woman needs to find her Prince Charming, and then we get to the end of the movie, which is not Jane Austen-like, ends with marriage, but ends with a prom. And that would become more typical of 90s and early 2000s, even mid-2000s movies, is that the climactic moment would be like the two people becoming girlfriend and boyfriend or going out on a date or going to prom, and that's the case here, instead of marriage, which is more of an American thing, I think, than a classical aristocratic thing as of, Victorian novels, or even going back to Jane Austen and before. But there's a timeless aspect to this movie, which is that you have the heroine, Andy, and then the three men, and there are three different types of men, who's going to go out with her. I think the audience roots for the McCarthy character we're supposed to throughout as the normal rich guy who could love anybody, and she needs to fall in love with him. They misunderstand each other. And then sort of the contrast to that are the needy John Cryer character, Ducky, who is more of a beta male type, although he wants to, go out with women. He's more aggressive in annoying ways. But then you have this other guy who likes Andy and wants to go out with her for 4 years, the James Spader character, and that's one of his motivations for trying to dissuade the Andrew McCarthy character from going out with her, and the McCarthy character doesn't know that. So the tensions for Andy are you're pulled away from going out with the rich guy because the rich and the poor, or the richer and the poorer elements, the Cryer character and the Spader character pulling her away. Whereas we need to have more of an amalgamation, more of a unification of the two classes, working class and upper class, as is kind of typical in a lot of John Hughes fare.
Will you listen to me? I don't want you to take me home.
Okay, why? What is the problem?
Because I don't want you to see where I live, okay?
Going along with that, another thematic concern is tradition in the past, clinging onto the past versus something new. This is a very, very common theme in all kinds of art and literature. Here it shows up in specific ways. For example, the Stanton character who is stuck, and he's a sad sack, on his wife leaving him permanently, and he's got to be knocked out of it. It's hard for him to get out of bed, and he's wallowing in depression or something like that, and he needs to get up and do something new, as in get a new job, get a new life.
I am perfectly happy with what I'm doing.
You know, you can't go on living every day in the past.
That's a tension for Andy, but Andy herself feels pulled into a traditional world of sticking in her class or going into the new class or meeting up with a new class, the upper class, who is the McCarthy character. You see this tension throughout with the music. I mean, you have older music like Cherish by The Association and the sort of 50s retro thing versus something new. And one of the shots that reminds me of this is at the prom. There's a black and white photo of an orchestra looming over the synth DJs who are playing the popular music that the students are dancing to. The past looms over the present. Are you going to change or not? That sort of shows up in all of these high school movies like this one, where all these characters are set to graduate. This comes up several times in the movie, that there's a future change and a humongous one coming up. The Cryer character wants to avoid it. He may want to flunk all of his classes to avoid it, but all the young people are thinking about this massive change of graduation and what's looming later on.
I propose that you're deliberately flunking your courses so that you can stay in high school.
Get out of here. Why would I do that?
Well, you know, you're not always one to face things.
What, since when? What am I not facing?
The future.
Well, whether or not you face the future, it happens, right?
This would come up in another great, to me, high school movie, Say Anything, by Cameron Crowe a few years later, which is who are you, but who are you going to change into because you know you have to change. And that's coming up for pretty much every young person in this movie. And of course, that's an audience concern, at least in the 1980s, and anybody who's a high schooler watching this movie. And so then one of the signals for change, or the possibilities of change for Andy, is the minor character Iona, her friend who works at the record store. We see her in a number of different outfits, a number of different hairstyles. She's trying to figure out who she is, her identity, through her hair and clothing, and which guy she's going to go out with. This is a classic Jane Austen thing. Have a minor character who has all of these thematic concerns, and which amplifies the major character, the heroine. And that's the case with Iona. She can't figure out who she is. She's trying to change a number of creatures, chameleon-like. And thus Andy needs to figure out who she is herself. And part of that is the love interest. Well, almost all of that is the love interest stuff. Which man of the three could she choose? Or, as the ending goes, will she choose to be single? Now, I find this movie has always watched better with a romantic interest, and that means my wife, who we both like this movie a lot. She likes Jane Austen fare, Victorian stuff, and I'm just a sucker sometimes for things like this. Not always. I find them schmaltzy or sentimental, and one could accuse this movie easily of that, but I don't find this movie to be as sentimental as other Hughes fare. The characters are rich to me, their concerns are rich, the dialogue is alive and well. And I like the director's choices, especially of the settings and the ambiance and then the acting in this. So I think everything is attractive to me personally. I don't know about you, but I think if you like 80s, 90s, maybe 2000s high school movie fare, this is one of the better ones to try. Now, what do you think of Pretty in Pink? This movie is underrated because on Letterboxd, the ratings aren't so good, but I rate it more highly. I enjoy watching this every single time. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments, and please subscribe to this channel for more great content. Thank you. Have a great day.